Hello, and welcome to Stories Across Borders. Here we discuss stories told across a range of different media, books, movies, you name it. The only rule is that we can only discuss things in terms of the writing. Anything like art, animation, etc. is off limits unless it relates directly to how the story is being told. I'm Daniel Radford, author, Danger with a Pair of Scissors, and also your host. And today I'm joined by a new guest, Sarah R. New, as we continue our return to the theme of horror stories. Hello,
Hello, thank you for having me.
happy to have you. Sarah is actually not only my guest today, but also the author of the story we're discussing, Hypochondria, which I thoroughly enjoyed reading.
Thank you. It's so weird. I don't know if you get this as well, but I always find it so weird when someone's actually read something, like someone I'm talking to, you know.
I have had that experience where it's like, oh, oh, you've read that. Did did you
You know
like
what
it?
my initial thing was like, how do you know about it? I sent it to you. Like,
Okay, yeah, no, I haven't quite had that one. So before we get into it, fair warning, Hypochondria is obviously a horror story and it deals with grief, death, self-harm, and mental illness, all that heavy stuff. So, fair warning just for anyone listening before we get into it,
there's
doing
a
my
bit
due
body horror in
diligence.
there as well.
Yeah.
You don't
I've
like gore.
the first time we did horror, I realized like halfway into the cycle that I had not done any content warnings, and I was like, well, I'll just write them in the text and hope people read that.
Yeah, they seem to be quite divisive. I don't quite understand exactly why, but I don't know. I think it's a very individual thing though, isn't it?
Yeah, well, some people it's a sensitivity thing, and they're sensitive to the idea of sensitivity, and that's a bit silly. Other people, it's a spoilers thing, and I'm like, well, I get the spoilers thing, but I feel like if it's vague enough, it's not really a spoiler.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I try and approach it. I feel like some things you need to be quite explicit upfront about some topics. I have that with my earlier book, but not so I think with hypochondria it's a lot easier to be more vague.
Yeah, and I mean, it's called hypochondria, but that I think that like that's probably a hint to the subject matter.
Yes.
Um,
I tried.
yeah. So, speaking of that subject matter. Seeing as you are the resident expert on the book, oddly enough, I thought you would be uniquely qualified to maybe just give us a brief rundown of what the story is about and what gave you the idea for it. That's typically how we start things off.
So hypochondria follows the character of Emma, who is having a very hard time after her mother dies. She finds out that she has a similar condition to what her mother's died of, and it sends her through into this like complete mental health spiral in which her life seems to disintegrate around her, quite heavily affected by her health anxiety and her health troubles. It's very much sort of based on an experience that I have gone through myself. So in July of 2024, I was sort of like unofficially diagnosed with hypermobility spectrum disorder, which then was like confirmed in January 2025. And that's a connective tissue disorder, which somehow everything seemed to make sense after that, all these like weird little random health things. But I honestly thought that getting the diagnosis would sort of help me understand the condition and understand what was going on with my body, but instead it kind of did the opposite thing. And I started really spiraling. So the book was very much a sort of like therapy session for myself in a way. It was sort of allowing me to process kind of what had happened and all these emotions that had come up with it, even though I already knew when I went for the diagnosis, but I think with health stuff, a lot of the time, even though you might be aware of something in the background, it doesn't always hit you until you have a diagnosis, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely understand where you're coming from. A lot of the stuff in the story did hit home for me as well in a similar way. Not exactly the same, but I've been dealing with some. I've been pretty open about it on the show as well. Like I've been dealing with health problems for the past 10 years that completely derailed my life. Interesting enough, actually, you mentioned it, connective tissue stuff does run in my family as well, but no idea what's wrong with me yet at all. So I've kind of had the opposite side of that experience where I'm just sitting there going, I just want to know what the problem is. But the subject matter
Yeah,
was there and was relatable enough for me, especially that I was sitting there going like, yeah, no, I get this because even when you know what is happening, even if you don't have a word for it, like people who don't have the experience, they go, well, I mean, at least you know what's happening, you know why you're feeling unwell, so you'll be fine. You're like, no, I'm not fine.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
A lot of this resonated with me a fair bit as well, and that is one of the things that I mentioned as well just before we started recording as well. We talked a little bit about this, and that's one of the things that I really liked about hypochondria, and it's something that I've talked about a lot on this podcast as well as in various articles and things like that. Is that I feel like that sort of mundane kind of horror is something that people really overlook and underestimate, but there is something that is because it's so much more real. I think it's often scarier than the supernatural stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I think also not so. I think that's reflected a lot in media, like visual media particularly, and I'm thinking mostly of like television because I told you I'm going to ramble. I'm going to go off on a spiel here. I'm
I,
sorry.
I'm I'm for it.
Um,
Let's go.
so I very much noticed that I've got this project that I want to do with like vampires through the ages and how it relates. But my mum tends to watch quite a lot of those American crime shows. She loves them, but they do seem to go through cycles. And it's quite interesting. She'll watch one like a rerun of something from 2005, and everyone's scared of serial killers, right? And then it gets sort of closer into the 2010s, 2015, and suddenly now everything like we're scared of terrorists, and now everything is terrorist based. They're all trying to like stop terrorist attacks or stop terror. It's like we very much project what we're scared of into our media, and then we try to allow ourselves to defeat it because we feel hopeless in our real lives to defeat it in a way. I know exactly what I want to say, but unfortunately it's quite late for me and my brain is going off in like different tangents.
No,
I don't think I'm making sense.
you, it makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, it's like you said, you wrote this story and it was almost therapy. And horror is like that. A lot of people who aren't into horror sort of question. They're like, this stuff is awful. It's all about, again, things you're afraid of, things that you find disquieting or uncomfortable that you don't want to confront. And I don't understand why you enjoy that. And for a lot of people, the answer to that question is catharsis. It is a
Yeah.
healthy, safe way to confront those things.
Yeah, and I have an anxiety disorder. A lot of people have said to me, they're like, well, doesn't that trigger your anxiety disorder? I was like, no, actually, I feel so much calmer because I can experience something that I'm scared of and process that in a healthy way. But I can't do that with video games. I can't play a video game. Like that's too immersive for me, but I can watch a film or I can read a book and that's enough.
Hey, whatever works. And I mean, that's what's great about fiction is that, it's not real. It can be whatever you need it to be. And I mean, that's a good enough jumping off point, I think, as well to talk about genre, actually, speaking of fiction being what you need it to be, because Hypochondria is a very interesting blend of sort of body horror and psychological horror, especially more on the psychological side, I personally felt when I was reading it, but it is clearly both, and the psychological element seems to feed directly into the physical side of that. And I thought that was a very cool way of approaching the subject matter.
Thank you. For me, I've always found that, particularly when it comes to body horror, but body horror is psychological anyway, because you're being attacked within yourself. And for me, a lot of psychological horror can be seen as the same way. You're still being attacked from within yourself, but it's your brain doing it and not your body.
You know, I had I had never thought of that, and you're so right.
I think it's just I overthink things to an astounding degree. Somebody said to me once, they're like, you're really good at writing getting inside a character's mind and putting a person there. And I was like, yeah, it's because I overthink everything. And that's all I know how to write. Like,
Hey, if you've got it, use it.
I think also with my own experience, I found now with the connective tissue disorder, I'm the first person in the family to have one, which is hysterical because I was told it was genetic and we cannot find anyone else who's got it. But for me now I overthink everything. Like my body clicks quite a lot naturally. If something clicks and it sounds slightly different, I'm immediately like, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? Has something broken? Is the bone density wrong? Like am I sick now? Like, it's very much interlinked in my mind.
I had never put it to words really like that, or even considered it that much because, I mean, I've written a fair amount of horror, but body horror is not something I've really dabbled in much myself, either as media consumption or as an author or whatever. But like hearing you put it that way, it makes so much sense to me now that you've said all that. And again, looking at my own experiences, my own health stuff, I've actually got PTSD I developed because of my health problems. And
Oh, sorry.
it is what it is. And like one of the things that's always so hard to explain to people is like why the things that don't seem like such a big deal to them, like feeling a little sick or whatever, freak me the hell out. Because again, they've
Yeah.
not had that same experience, and you've just put it exactly the way I do explain it to them in those circumstances, which is like, yeah, but I feel like my body is rebelling against me. Like this thing that is supposed to be mine is actively
Yeah, no,
acting against
exactly.
me.
Exactly. I say to a lot of people, and they never quite get it, but I'm like, it's not just me here. There's brain, there's body, and then I'm in here and I'm the consciousness. And brain and body both actively work against me. Like, and
Yeah.
everyone's like, but you are the brain and you are the body. I was like, yes, I am, but also I'm not. And then I say this to people, and the amount of people who have been like, Sarah, you're schizophrenic. You need to go and talk to someone. And I'm like, no, because other people understand what I mean, but they're like me, you know?
It's like I understand logically that yes, the brain and the body and all that is me, but I am also the consciousness that is the sum of those parts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I know that I can do like a 3 mile walk, but literally yesterday, body was not having it, you know?
Yeah, and yeah, sometimes those different parts of the person are not in agreement.
No.
Oh man. A weird place for it to happen, but it's been a long time since I've had someone say to me exactly like how I have thought and felt and so like it's a very strange experience to have that happen on a podcast.
Yeah. I was like, I'm very lucky because I do have that now. I'm in a weird position because the NHS, I think the NHS is a fantastic thing. Unfortunately, it can't help me, so I'm going private with my healthcare at the minute, and my physiotherapist is incredible. And I have these conversations with her, and she's like, "Yeah, yeah, that makes complete sense," but no one else gets it. I say this to someone who's not chronically ill, they're like, "Oh my God."
Yeah, people think they understand some of them, but they don't. They really don't. And again, this is something that absolutely like shows through in the story as well because the people around Emma, even though some of them seem fairly well-intentioned, they clearly are not understanding what she is going through at all. Some of them seem to think they have an idea of it, like Lisa is particularly like, yeah, no, I get it, you're having a hard time, but it's a pretty flimsy support network.
Yeah, I think unfortunately that's just I have a lot of really great people around me. I'm quite lucky, but it's amazing if like one person in your support network's like out, how flimsy it can become very quickly.
Yeah, that's so true. And again, it just like reading the story, I'm watching this and I'm seeing the situation, and it's so clear to me as like the audience that Emma has probably always been a pretty anxious person, and obviously the loss of her mother has made her spiral a lot. But the people in her life obviously are not a very strong support network for her, and you can tell that straight away because even with John, she, well, and boy, do I have some thoughts on him, but she doesn't want to tell him that she's, had this genetic testing done in the first place. She doesn't want to talk to him about the things that she's going to have done out of fear. And I think that it really goes to show that everything is scarier when you feel isolated and don't have that support network. And that is like such a strong tool to have as an author at your disposal.
I was like, that sort of goes back to what we were talking about before with like the mundane, isn't it? The whole like
Yeah.
fear of like isolation. I think it sort of relates very much also in a way to end of life care. Like you can have family around you, but that doesn't mean that you'll be supported, you know?
No. Yeah. Everyone wants to think that they are going to be able to be there for people when they need them at that sort of at that time, but the reality is it's hard. It takes a lot of strength to be able to put your own discomfort and fear aside and be there for a person either in their time of need, it would be at the end of their life or just when they're going through a particularly difficult situation. And it is exactly that mundanity of it that makes it resonate so much with me, that makes this story feel so real, is that this isn't a ghost. It's not a slasher. It's not, some ghoul or something. This is happening somewhere right now as we speak, and that's scary.
And it's not a threat that can be vanquished.
No.
Because as much as yes, Emma can get therapy and she can overcome the health anxiety and all that, it's always in the back of your mind. It's always there. Like I'm always like, oh well, like I've got a weird pain in my stomach. Is that my appendix? You know, even as like you might go through a patch where you think like you're healed in air quotes, it recurs. Mental illness, especially, is one of those things that I think you always, once you have a bout of mental illness, it can be very hard to sort of come out of that, and it always sort of lingers with you to a degree.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it's a threat that you can't vanquish because it's with you always. It is a part of you. The monsters in your head are always going to be scarier than the fact that you know that, yeah, there's someone on the street right now who's a serial killer. Sure, but they're not next to you all the time, whispering in your ear.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just that's one of those things that I think that people just don't think about when they're writing horror. And I don't mean that to disparage other horrors, that sort of thing. Like, don't get me wrong, I love some good supernatural horror and things like that as well. But I wish more people took the approach that you've taken with Hypochondria and done something more grounded in reality, where it's like my unstable internet connection. Okay, we're back.
I can't wait to read the book about the unstable internet connection.
I mean,
I
someone's.
genuinely think you could have something there.
Oh, you put someone in the right scenario where it's like the internet connection communication is the only thing keeping them alive, and it keeps coming in and out. That's some good tension right
Yeah.
there. One of us will probably get to it.
I have a notebook filled with more stories than I could ever write, and I'm like
Yeah.
desperately trying to get them all down while I can.
Yeah, no, I'm working on two books right now, and I know I had this idea recently. I'm like, do I want to do that? And said no.
Oh my God, no, that's literally the same as me because I've gone back to university. I'm doing my master's degree in creative practice, and my major project, I'm not doing a dissertation. I'm writing two novellas. And then I went out to Sweden for my for a week. We did like a week-long residential in Sweden, and I got this fantastic new shiny idea, and I all I want to do is work on that,
Yeah.
and I'm not allowed. I have to finish the novellas first.
Oh man. Now that's the real horror.
Maybe the book after the three that I want to work on is just being taunted by new shiny ideas and not being able to commit.
That one, I'm sure that one exists.
Stephen King's probably done it. Like
Oh, I mean, he's done
he's
everything.
he's written everything. Like
Oh, I was going somewhere. Give me a minute. I'll get it back. I'll get it back. We can do this.
okay. The train of thought has left the
Yeah,
station.
it's just gone. Right. So I was talking a bit. We were talking about Emma's like situation with the isolation and the lack of support network and things like that, and how isolation is one of those things that like amplifies horror so much, right? And that made me think as well of, and to be fair, like granted, it's not all on the people in Emma's life. I feel like the reality is that yes, she has little reason to trust she can reach out to people, but she doesn't really seek help herself either, and
Yeah.
that contributes to the anxiety and the fear of her situation, which is also again very real. Sometimes we spend all this effort building walls around ourselves and then are terrified when we find ourselves stuck in them.
Yes. Yeah.
But I I couldn't not talk about John,
Yeah.
who is a stereotype, let's be honest.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
You know, he is very much the stereotypical man child. Absolutely. And as a man, reading a character like that always makes me cringe a bit because there's always that instinct to scream, I promise it's not all of us.
Yes. No, I get that sometimes when I read certain authors writing female characters.
But the reality is that, you know, that guy does exist. There is a million Johns in the world. And I feel like it would be remiss when talking about the like mundane horror that is the story. Mundane sounds so derogatory in hindsight, but I can't think of a better word. Is that the subtle horror of John's presence in the story and just that unease that he adds to the already tense feelings that Emma has.
It's one of those things that, like, it is documented that if women get sick, partners do tend to leave. Like, male partners have been known to leave because of the sickness, which was something that I was trying to get across. Um, However, in a 500, no, 15,000 word novella, 500 word? Bloody hell. 1,500 word novella, it didn't come off as subtle as I was necessarily hoping. I think, I mean, unfortunately, the portrayal of John, not through my own experience, but from what I've seen, he's very based on things that I have seen people go through in real life and partners of people that I've known. I'm trying to be subtle because I don't want people coming after me after they listen to this. But like, I mean, I do kind of feel like most women do know they have a an ex like John, or they've had a partner like John, or they've known a friend who's had a partner like John. I think as much as yes, we know it's not all men. Unfortunately, there's too many of them out there like that. And it's so frustrating, especially from an outsider. I mean, I'm sure you've had it with like friends and relatives when they've had an absolutely awful partner for them, and you've been like, just leave.
Oh, all the time. Yeah.
Just leave. What are
Yeah.
you doing? You could do so much better. And that's kind of what I wanted to put the reader in a position of. I wanted to kind of force the reader to be sort of that friend who you want the best for Emma, but you physically aren't able to help her as well.
I like that you did that because I think that one of the really interesting things you can do, especially when you're writing horror or something horror adjacent, is put the reader in a position where you are basically playing on their empathy and you are making them feel like a helpless observer. Because like that's a potent feeling to be like sitting here going, I can see everything that is wrong here, and I want to like just reach through the page and like just push you to opposite sides of the book, you know? And I appreciate that you did that because that is kind of the feeling that I had reading it, and it is a very strong response to have, I think, when you're it's the same feeling as when you're watching like two people argue and you're just sitting here going, I can't interject for whatever reason, whether it's just social pressure because it's two complete strangers and I just don't feel comfortable,
Yeah.
whatever the reason. But you're watching
But one
that,
person's obviously right.
yeah, and you just instinctively want to be like, just turn around and leave. You are correct. Just save yourself the trouble. But yeah, you kind of just, I think yeah, it's just a very human response to have, at least for anyone who has basic empathy. And I think that it was a good use of that feeling to put the audience in the position of watching this train wreck happening and just being a helpless observer. And you're right, it's a little unclear at first. Not in a bad way. I mean, like our first introduction to the idea of John, where like un it's unclear if he's a problem or if Emma is overreacting, and that makes sense. That's often what it's like in reality as well. But it becomes very clear very quickly that he is a very superficial person who has a very unhealthy view of Emma and her relationship to him. And maybe you wanted it to be more subtle, and I think, a lot of people might even, well, I don't know about a lot, to be fair, that seems unfair, but there are definitely people I think who would read that and go, oh, I mean, this is just a stereotype, but that guy exists, and I think it was fine not to be subtle about it.
I think also sometimes like I love a novella. I prefer to write novellas. But I feel like you can't always be as subtle as you want in a novella because you just don't have the time. You don't have the space to be as subtle. If it was longer, then yeah, it would have been a lot more subtle. But to me, writing this book, it felt very much like it. I don't know if it's due to my personal experience that I was going throughout it. It felt very much like a 0 to 100 narrative. Probably because I was also dealing with it in a very much like a rapid way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I do get that. I mean, I understand the time constraints as well because every one of these cycles, I write a story for the cycle to fit theme. We discussed that in one of the episodes, and the number of times I've been like, "Sorry guys, I wrote this in a week, and and it's 3 pages long." I would love to get into more depth on the subject matter, but time constraints and space constraints are a thing. But as far as the nature of the narrative being, very 0 to 100, I do get that. Like, I think I can see what you mean because you get 2 chapters of fairly slow build up and then bam, it hits you. But I get the vibe that, again, that this isn't necessarily new for Emma. It's just that the inciting incident of the death of her mum has caused her to spiral much more rapidly. I don't think it's a new problem necessarily. Some people have mentioned as well, that she's been sick since they met her.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was very much sort of like based on my own experience because when I initially got the diagnosis, I went and I told my job at the time, and my bosses were great, to be fair. They were absolutely fantastic with me, but a lot of my colleagues were like, "Yeah, but you're always sick, so why is it different now?" And I was like, "Well, now I have a reason."
Yeah, now I'm sick and vindicated.
And it was one of those things because I kept saying, I don't know, it feels like I kind of manifested it for myself because I kept saying, oh, you know what? I wish there was just like one thing that explained why I keep having all these weird random symptoms and all these weird medical things that keep happening to me. And then, yeah, there was. It was a connective tissue disease. Who knew? Not me. Like,
That's just how it goes sometimes, right? You just you don't even think about it. You're just like, oh, I guess I'm just not well. And then, I mean, granted, my experience was very different there, but I've definitely seen it with people who are like, yeah, I just haven't been well at all lately, and then they find out they have some condition, and everything suddenly makes sense. The trouble is, especially in the era of Googling all your own symptoms, it's very easy to end up in Emma's situation where you are
yeah,
seeing things that are not there. I mean, I think we're all familiar with the meme of, you Google a cough and it's cancer.
yeah. I had that experience actually. Before this diagnosis, I used to work in cinemas for years. One of them was underground. So I knew I had a vitamin D deficiency because I worked pretty much during the winter, all of the daylight hours. And I didn't see, I actually had one period of like a run where I had a few days where I was doing shifts on the bounce. So I didn't see the sun for like 3, 4 days. So I went to the doctor I was like, I keep getting these pains in my legs, and I've got a vitamin D deficiency. I think it's arthritis and the vitamin D deficiency. And he was like, You're 24. No, you don't. And I was like, Yes, I do. I definitely have the vitamin D deficiency, and I'm pretty sure this is arthritis, because there's a family history. And he was like, No, you don't. And I was like, How about you just humor me and you take some blood tests and you give me an x-ray? And he was like, Fine, fine. And then when you don't have it, like I'll say I told you so. And I was like, Great, great. And I was completely right.
Yeah.
And he was like, I really did not think I thought you'd been Googling. And I was like, Nope.
The number of medical professions I've come across at this point who are like, "Oh, you can't have anything too bad. You're too young."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Well, I've been sick for 10 years now, so I guess I was right." Not that anyone knows what it is, but you know. Which I can't remember the doctor character's name. I'm sorry. In it was
Dr. Kane.
yeah, she was an interesting addition on that note because she feels in so many ways like the doctor that anyone who feels like they're going through some long-term issues, chronic issues, wishes they had. The one who just immediately takes them seriously.
I've been very lucky with my doctors, to be completely fair, whereas I have been taken quite seriously. But I think that's because I have a reputation at my doctor's surgery now.
That's an
I
interesting way
come
of putting
in, they're
it.
like, "Oh God, she's back. She's back." They're like, "Okay, what's the problem?" And I have this like weird sixth sense. I'll go in and I'll be like, "Yeah, my thyroid's got worse. I need a blood test. I need to go up on the prescription." And they're like, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" I'm like, yeah, I think that's what it is. At least I'm hoping that's what it is because it's fixable. And they're like, okay, she's gonna be right. Like, I'm always right. I went in actually and was like, I think I've got Ehlers-Danlos, and my doctor was like, yeah, you probably do. Like,
I mean, that makes sense. There's connective tissue stuff going on. I say it as someone who's not at all a medical profession, but who has a sister who has something along those lines.
I should have gone into medicine, honestly. I really
Yeah,
feel like I
I
should
mean,
have.
I'm starting to think maybe you picked the wrong career path.
Yeah, I diagnose other people now. I'm like, no, you've got this. Go to your doctor and ask for this. My sister was like, oh, I think I've got diabetes. I keep getting these weird headaches in the middle of the day. I was like, no, you need glasses. You've got eye strain. She's like, no, I've got diabetes. I'm gonna go get a blood test. It was eye strain. She's
Yeah.
got glasses now. Like,
Yeah, I mean, but that's exactly it, right? It's so easy to jump to the worst possible scenario in your head and then and convince yourself that you have some
yeah.
like life-altering illness and then it just be something you
You-
need, like you need
My,
glasses. And that's how you end up in situations where you're trying to cut out
my
your own
sister was like,
appendix.
oh, but my blood sugar keeps going down in the afternoon. I was like, yeah, you need a snack, Jess. You're a
Oh
very
man.
hangry person. You need a snack.
I'm Hypochondria is beginning to make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is people say that they write what they know and you go, yeah, I mean, I get. No, you definitely write what you know, huh?
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, I'm very much in the school of that write what you know is overrated advice because you can always know more. But by the same count, like if you have the stuff to draw on, use it.
I also kind of get really annoyed when people are like, oh, just write what you know, because I mean, let's face it, the guy who wrote Friday the 13th, had he really experienced that?
No, no, it's
Like, no, of course
it's
he
terrible
didn't.
writing advice. Like
Yeah.
it's a lot like it's one of those things where like show don't tell, where it's one of those things where everyone just parrots ad nauseum
Yeah.
without any
Obviously do your
nuance.
research,
Yeah.
but be a bit imaginative with it.
And I mean, that's clearly what you've done here. Like, I think that you have done exactly that. You've taken something that you know and have experience with and twisted it into something horrific.
Yeah. Also, don't cut out your own appendix. I don't think that would work.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't think anyone should ever do that.
No.
I have the number of times I've felt the compulsion to do some of the things that she did, where like
Oh no,
with a
so the
tooth
appendix
or
thing. The appendix thing, I have to actively try to forget that I have an appendix still, because otherwise every so often I'll get a weird pain like in my kidney area and I'll be like, it's going. this is how I die. It's not. It's sometimes you just need to drink more water. Like I have to like actively tell myself like the appendix is not exploding, and if it did, it wouldn't just be instantaneous. And if it was instantaneous, then like it's gonna be very quick for me, and I'm not gonna know.
You'll know for about 3 seconds.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, the thing with like when she was like about to rip out one of her teeth, I have the number of times I have like fantasized about just doing that, just to get it, like just for something to be over. Obviously, I haven't because I'm not crazy, not
yeah,
that kind of crazy anyway. But it was just another one of those little things where I was reading through it and I was like, this is one of those things where it's going to hit two different parts of your audience differently. The people who have been through chronic pain and conditions like that are all going to go, okay, this is a little too real. And the people who have never experienced anything like that are going to go, this is horrifying and revolting.
yeah. That's been the kind of reactions that I've had.
I mean, you got the correct reactions, I would argue.
Someone said to me, they were like, I don't see how anyone would ever want to pull out their own appendix. And I was like, do you not? Can you not imagine a world where someone might? But it's really it's so bizarre how people approach it so differently, you know?
Well, it's the difference between, I mean, I feel like how empathetic a person is probably plays into it as well, but it is also the difference between having experience with it and not. Because when a work of fiction like speaks to you at a very personal level, it's obviously going to have a much more powerful impact. Like reading the story for me, so many of the things in it were things where I have experienced or at least had experienced something very similar. So it was like, okay, this is pretty real. This is visceral. I feel this in my soul. I have been wherever is at this moment. And someone else, it's going to be they're not going to focus on that psychological, like very relatable, tangible side of it. They're going to be focusing on like, wow, that's really gross.
Yeah, I've had these conversations in real life as well. It's so funny. I have a friend who has a friend who's got like a bit of their elbow chipped off, and it's
Okay.
like floating around in the tip of their elbow. He was like, "Oh, like he just gets so annoyed with it, and he keeps talking about how he wants to get it removed." And I was like, "Yeah, I would have just cut it out by now." And he was like, What do you mean?" Like
I'm concerned by the fact that you might be being literal. Yeah.
genuinely, yeah. They're like, what do you mean?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm just joking." They're like, "But I don't think you are."
Oh no.
I was told in my last workplace actually I had to stop making jokes because people thought I was serious. Too many people thought I was serious. We had beer lines that we would clean with like a purple liquid, and I was told off. They had to change the color of the liquid that they bought because I made too many jokes about it being forbidden Ribena. They were like, "She's actually gonna drink this. Like it's corrosive. She's gonna die." Like.
That is definitely something that shows in the story in the way you write. Like I've talked to I've talked to a few other authors at this point, or like other creators and things like that, and it's always interesting to see how different voices approach approach writing and how much of the person themselves shows through in the way they've written a story. Because you get some people who are very detached, they're just writing a story and that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. And then you have other people where it's like, I feel like this person is speaking the story to me.
Yeah, sometimes like I have read for quite a lot of authors that I know, and it's weird the ones who I can hear almost reading the story to me and the ones that I can't.
Yeah.
It's so fun, but it's such a weird sort of thing to pick up on.
Yeah, and it's like I don't think either is right or wrong either. It's just a stylistic thing. And having talked to you like this now, I can see the story that you wrote, and I'm like, yeah, I could hear this in your voice. Like you write the same way that you talk, which is neat. It's funny. It's like I wish I had more to say on the subject that you tied into the episode, or no, it's just kind of cool. It's just a thing I noticed.
Thank you. I don't know how to like respond.
Yeah,
I
it's like
feel I
it's
feel
one of those things like there's
exposed.
probably something there, but it's just a thing that I picked up on. And For the audience there, I really wish I had more to add to that I could go into some like deep author talk right now, but no, it's just a thing. I gotta do something to bring this back on theme. What am I doing? Horror, right. It's a horror story.
Scary things. I am scared by my own body, and I wrote a book about it.
I can work with that. I have sort of I guess theory, hypothesis, something along those lines, right? Where I am of the opinion that horror is like peak horror. Horror at its best is a mix of certainty and uncertainty.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I've talked about it a few times. I've definitely written articles on it on my site and things like that. I am very much of the opinion that horror is at its most horror or most terrifying or most uneasy, I don't know, at its pinnacle when there is the combination of the certainty, the knowledge that something is bad, there is a problem, and something very bad is going to happen, colored with the uncertainty that you don't know exactly how it's going to happen or when.
Yeah. It's just you were saying that, and there was like one image that really like jumped into my mind. Have you seen It Follows?
I haven't, but I really want to.
Oh my God. So I'm not going to spoil it for you, but the end scene really made me think of that. There's like the last image of the film was so much like certainty and uncertainty for me. And I think that's why, having watched the film, it like lingers so much with you afterwards because you go through this narrative. You have this, yes, this has happened, this is the ending, and then the last shot just completely turns that on its head for you. My background's in film, so and I worked in cinemas for a very long time, so I I've seen a lot of films.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of films that it immediately was like, oh yeah, that's it follows like
Yeah, the example I usually give is always very generic. It's just the standard setup for how to do jump scares correctly. Because people always crap on jump scares, and I think that's very unfair. I think they're just when they're used correctly, they're a very viable,
yes,
valuable tool. And it is that idea of it's a dark room, you know that something's out there, and there's the creaking of the floorboards or whatever, and they open the door and there's nothing there. But you know
yeah.
that any minute now they're
I
coming
think
out from somewhere.
unfortunately for the jump scare, it's become so like so many bad jump scares
Yeah,
have
it's
become so
overused
prominent
and
now that
yeah.
it's one of those things, isn't it? Oh,
But
I
that's just it's the go-to example I give for the formula because I think it's something that everyone can understand. And I bring it up, not the jump scares, but the idea of certainty, uncertainty, and my whole I don't know thesis statement with that because I was curious where you stood on that and your thoughts on that because you clearly are right horror in a very different way than I do. And I feel like I can still see that in Hypochondria because you can see Emma spiraling and there is always the perpetual threat that maybe there is something wrong with it or maybe the problem's all net, whatever. And I feel I can see that mix there. It's that, there is the certainty that there is something very bad is going to happen and it's just a question of is it because she's going to turn out to be right and no one believed her, or is it going to be because she does something to herself? I felt like it was still like that makeup.
you see, I kind of feel like with psychological horror, there's always an element of uncertainty because in any psychological horror, you cannot vanquish it, like we've said. It's always going to be in the back of your mind, and so there's always that, what is it going to recur? Is it going to come back? Can you just allow it to be at peace? This is kind of what annoys me sometimes with narratives, with when it's a psychological narrative, and then they're like, and then at the end we put this away, and it never bothered us again because I kind of feel like having been quite severely mentally ill myself, I'm very aware that it's always there, you know.
Yeah,
I'm very aware
right.
that it could come back at any point, and I have to work on techniques to try and put that at bay. I feel like Gothic horror does that really well as well, with the idea of the uncertainty as well. And that's why I think Gothic horror is having a bit of a resurgence because that's becoming very much in the sort of cultural eye right now. that horror isn't just gory, it's very psychological, it's very like uncertain as well. We live in very uncertain times and we reflect that in our media, like we've spoken about. I think when people think of horror, a lot of the time they jump very much to slashers
Yes.
and to ghosts and ghouls and like the sort of like traditional stereotype of horror. But I think horror is so interwoven into who we are as a culture, who we are as a species in a way. When you think back, like maybe this is like maybe I'm just going off on one. Maybe it's been too long of a day for me, but I just kind of think back, like even back when we were cave people and we coexisted with the Neanderthals, and there was this whole idea of they looked like us, but they weren't like us, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
I know what I'm trying to say, and it's just not coming out.
I,
I
I mean, I do kind of get what you mean. Like, fear is whether we want to
It's
acknowledge
so
it or not.
interwoven into who we are.
Yeah, and because of that, it's always played a part in our stories, and there's always been a role,
It's kept us alive for so long.
and it's just kind of so weird. It's just a very much part of who we are, and that's why horror does so well and is such a popular genre always, I think. I think you're definitely right about that.
I think also, sorry, this is kind of why comedy does so well as well, because to me, I see horror and comedy very much as two sides of the same coin,
No,
because
I'm the same.
it's an emotional release, whether you're laughing or whether you're scared. You can process something. I find that I love stand-up comedy. I really got into Taskmaster a couple of years ago.
Me too.
And sorry.
I said me too.
And yeah, well, I got like weirdly obsessed with it. And living in South London, I'm very lucky to be able to see quite a lot of them. But I found that I became so much more comfortable with a lot of horror after getting into comedy. I think because it's such an extreme release, either way.
I've said before, on other episodes, I think I wrote a comic about it at one point, like a little, just a short thing. The setup for the perfect jump scare and the perfect like joke are exactly the same.
Yeah.
It's set up expectations and then subvert expectations. Basically, I can't remember exactly what I said, but it's exactly the same. It's just that the end result is different. But yeah, just where'd it go? There it was. Yeah, just one last thing, I guess, before we to close things up. I did want to say, jump back a little bit when you were talking about, the fact that with psychological horror, how it is always all like really, at the end when it's always like, and then everything was okay because that's not how it worked, and that's one of the things that I found interesting about hypochondria. And I don't know how much of this was just me going by my own experience reading into things or not, but getting to the end of the story where they're all just sort of sitting there in the hospital going, yeah, everything's gonna be fine now. And that felt so uncomfortable to me. Like in the right way, not like you messed up in the this is a horror story kind of way. Because the whole time all I could think was it's really good that she's got the support now, but I feel like these people are misunderstanding that it's not over.
Yeah, no, I did that deliberately.
Yeah.
I I feel like a lot of people who don't deal with chronic illness and chronic pain on a day and disability on a daily basis very much feel like the amount of people who are like, oh, Sarah's had a flare, but she's coming out of it now, so she's going to be all better, you know?
Yeah.
It was so obvious, and I used to have that in the cinema where people be like, "Oh, well, Sarah seems better now. She'll be all better now." And then my boss was like, "Well, yeah, but you do know that she still has like her daily level of pain. She's just not in the extra pain. She's still going to need help. It doesn't mean that she's like 100% now. She doesn't work at 100%. She physically can't be at 100%, you know?"
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people who haven't experienced that, who haven't even like cared for someone in that position, don't always understand it.
That's exactly what like the ending of this story felt like to me. It was very much that even Emma herself, because sometimes you do it to yourself. I did it all the time when I first got sick. I was like, okay, I'm through it now. I can get back to work. No, I can't.
No, I do the same thing now. And like I've had this diagnosis for nearly a year at this point. I've just got over the flu, and I was like, why have I got no stamina? And my physio was like, because you just had the bloody flu. It's going to take you longer to recover than most people. And I was like, oh,
Oh, but I don't wanna.
but I've been working so hard all year. And she went, yeah, and you still have the strength, but like you're going to have to build up your stamina again. You're starting from a disadvantage.
Yeah, I was lucky because I my work before I got sick, I was a dancer, so I was in very good physical condition. So I had like a buffer before I completely my body completely rotted away, you know. But it does the ending of the story, it did feel exactly like that to me, you know, all of them thinking the storm has passed, and I'm just sitting here going, oh no, this is going to happen again. Very much like what you said about the ending of like It Follows. And yeah, I just had to draw attention to that because I feel like it's one of those endings where either either you're gonna get it or you're not, and that's not criticism necessarily. It's just one of those things where it's like I can see people who are gonna read who have probably read this and gone, "Oh, it's good that everything worked out okay in the end. I thought this was gonna have a bad ending," and I'm like, "Haha, it did."
I've had that conversation with people, and they've been talking about it, and their eyes light up, and they talk about how happy they are and it's ended well. And I've just been like, oh, I'm not gonna burst your bubble. I'm just gonna let you think this because I don't know how to explain it without.
Yeah.
You can say something 1,000 times, and people won't necessarily get what you're saying unless they are in that
Knowing and
situation.
understanding are not necessarily the same thing, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, that's actually is about time. So I think we've done all right here. It has been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I've had so much fun, even though I've been rambling for an hour.
Like I said, I love it when my guests ramble. It is less work for me. I just get to sit here and listen to interesting people talk. Cool. And for those of you who are, the audience who are, I assume, also listening to this, you can, of course, find more of these episodes on my site, radfordwrites.com, as well as going up on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that stuff. On my site, you can also find articles and stories. You can buy my books. I always appreciate the support. And is there anything you'd like to plug or anywhere people can find you?
So, Hypochondria is available for free on my website. It was written in a serialized fashion, and that's sarahrnew.wordpress.com. And then I'm on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, Substack under the name Old Bera, which is Aldbera.
Excellent. If you haven't read the story before, guys, I do highly recommend it. Obviously, we did a whole episode on it for a reason, so I just go give it a look. Until then, goodbye.